the participants and for the judges, which are to be followed throughout the competition. All the participants must keep their videos on throughout the session. When one speaker presents the other speaker, please ensure that your audio is on mute so as to avoid any interruptions. The speaker are not allowed to share any materials using the share screen option. We'll begin with the affirmative side, then followed by the opposing side. Once the opening statements of both the sides are completed, we shall move on to the rebuttals and the sub-rebuttals. Timelines for the finals are: the opening statement for both affirmative and opposing sides will be of 4 minutes each, followed by a rebuttal session of 2 minutes each and a sub-rebuttal session of 2 minutes each. The participants, please be alert of the chat box. The speaker will be notified at the end of their second minute for opening statements and at the end of the first minute of rebuttals and sub-rebuttals. Note that after the allotted time, each 10 seconds will lead to the deduction of 1 mark from your total marks. Also, an addition of 15 seconds will be provided as buffer time in case you face any network issues, and if you're not able to back up within 15 seconds, sorry, but we will be resuming with our time. So that's all about the rules and timeline structure for the finals. Now let's move on to the allotment of sides for the participants. Shivdat, could you please able me to screen share?
Please try if granted the access.
Okay, thank you. Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
Judges, please note, LEDC 101 will be going for the affirmative side. Judges, please note, LEDC 101 will be going for the affirmative side and LEDC 29 will be going for the opposing side. The participant for the affirmative side, you may start. I'll start the timer now.
Ma'am, could you please confirm if I'm audible and visible properly?
Yes, you are.
Thank you.
You may start now.
All right. So with the prior permission, I would like to begin. My team code is LEDC 101 and I will be speaking for the motion. I will first discuss the consequences of criminalizing marital rape, and thereafter I'll suggest some alternatives which in my humble opinion are going to work far more effectively than criminalizing marital rape. So moving on to the first limb of my argument, I would like to point out the 4 main consequences of criminalizing marital rape. First, it would interfere with the personal laws of the parties in the marriage. Mr. Speaker, in India, we only have a uniform criminal code, but the marriages are still governed by the personal laws, and each personal law has a different perspective on marriage. So putting a criminal penalty on a relationship which is completely civil in nature grossly violates not just the personal law, but also the secular spirit of our constitution, and it will even have the impact of destroying the whole institution of marriage altogether. The second consequence is that it would result into the misuse of the law by the women who are not even the actual victims of marital rape. For instance, if the wife herself is involved in adultery and is caught by her husband, she can simply exculpate herself from the blame by imposing false accusation on the husband. The husband would always have to remain in fear and anxiety that if he ever dares to contradict his wife, she can simply get him behind the bars without any actual fault of his. The third consequence is that such a law is not going to be of any use to a woman who is actually a victim of marital rape. For instance, Mr. Speaker, if a woman is being forced into a sexual activity, then surely she is also facing cruelty and violence as well. Now, if she hasn't been able to report the domestic violence up till now, then how can she be expected to report her own rape to the authorities? So, Mr. Speaker, in practical circumstances, such a law would not be of any use to the actual victim and would only be available for the misuse by the not so victim women. The fourth consequence is that such a law would only become a burden for the judiciary as well as the investigating agencies, because there is absolutely no way of finding out whether the accusation on the husband are true or not, because the purview of the word consent is way too broad. what otherwise appears to be consensual can somehow be proved as a rape. And even if a sexual intercourse was initially consensual, it can later be termed as a marital rape by the wife. I can recall a recent statement given by the Union Minister Smriti Irani that not, and I quote, that not every marriage can be condemned as violent and not every man can be declared as a rapist, unquote. So now moving on to the second limb of my argument, I will now suggest a couple of alternatives which in my humble opinion are going to work far better than criminalizing marital rape. Mr. Speaker, if a sexual act is termed as a marital rape, then automatically we can presume that there was definitely some act of violence or cruelty involved in it. So instead of criminalizing the sexual activity, the wife can rather accuse the husband of cruelty and domestic violence, all of which are already punishable under the Indian law. Mr. Speaker, the victimized wife can, since the personal laws have defined cruelty very broadly, the victimized wife can simply seek a separation or a divorce if she is being tortured so much. Mr. Speaker, we also have the Domestic Violence Act and the Dowry Prohibition Act, which are all working as a panacea in curtailing the crimes against women. And the marital rape of a girl below the age of 15 years is anyways punishable under the IPC. Therefore, for all these contentions, Mr. Speaker, I humbly contend that there is absolutely no need for criminalizing marital rape. And if it is criminalized, it would only be a meddling with the institution of marriage. With this, I would like to end now. It was a matter of honor for me to express my views before this esteemed panel of judges. Thank you.
Okay. Now, LEDC 29, you can start with your opening statement.
Am I visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Start.
Well, according to the proposition, marital rape is the chosen one, the hero who's protecting the treasure chest called the institution of marriage. And if we declare the hero a criminal, apparently the whole institution of marriage itself is going to fall. Now, my question is this. Is the institution of marriage really so weak that it needs to be safeguarded by something that should have been criminalized ages ago? On that note, a very good morning. I'm contestant LEDC 21, and I will be speaking against the motion. Does criminalization of marital rape meddle with the institution of marriage? First of all, marriage is not institutional to begin with, but personal. Nothing can abolish the institution of marriage except a law making it unlawful and punishable. Divorce may ruin a marriage, but it does not have the ability to undermine marriage as an institution or the family structure. Similar is the case with marital rape. Similarly, if the rationale was that marital rape as a crime might destroy the institution of marriage, then divorce and judicial separation should be forbidden as well, since there would have been no differentiation between the institute of marriage and marriage. It is consequently critical to recognize that wives are not sexual slaves of their husband, and being forced into sexual intercourse is not a family value that should be preserved in order to defend the family platform. The argument that criminalization of marital rape would lead to anarchy or stress in families is simply a justification of the state to allow spousal domestic violence to go unpunished by bracketing forced sexual violence under the all-encompassing right to marital privacy, where the intrusion of the state would be unwarranted. But rape within marriage itself indicates discord and violence in a marriage, and the family would already be under so-called stress. The threshold of violence within a marriage in the form of marital rape would already have been crossed, necessitating the state to intervene for it to no longer remain a private matter. 4 arguments are normally raised in support of the marital rape exception. First, that allowing wives to complain about rape will destroy the family. Second, by definition, sex within marriage can never amount to rape. Third, that the criminalization of marital rape would violate the privacy of marriage and, to put it euphemistically, allow the state into the bedroom. And last, that it would become a weapon of abuse in the hands of unscrupulous wives. Each of these arguments is a non-starter. The belief that the institution of marriage would wither away if marital rape were made criminal appears to rest upon the bizarre assumption that coerced sex is essential to marriage, when the very idea of coercion is something that is not supported by the institution of marriage. The second and third arguments were good when the IPC was framed back in 1860. And they rest upon two assumptions. First, that marriage amounts to a one-time, lifetime consent to sexual intercourse, like it's some OTT platform that you can subscribe to once. And second, that the institution of marriage must be placed beyond the realm of constitutional scrutiny. Both these assumptions are, however, entirely incompatible with the definition of an ideal institution of marriage itself. Both members in the union are allowed to retain their autonomy, and marriage is not consent to become someone's property. In conclusion, an institution that upholds the very structure of society is not weak enough to be destabilized by criminalizing marital rape, which never was a part of the institution to begin with. Thank you.
Okay, now LEDC 101, you can move on with your rebuttals.
Thank you.
1 minute.
So that was a
1 minute. Your time starts now.
all right. So that was a really overwhelming speech. However, I just have two questions. First of all, if you what are you exactly trying to achieve by criminalizing marital rape? You can try to achieve either of the two things. Either you want to safeguard the wife or you want to punish the husband. Both of these things are already available to us. Either the wife can simply get a separation or a divorce. Since you are saying that preserving a marriage is not so important, so just get a divorce, right? Or if you don't want it, if you really want to preserve it, get a separation. And if you want to punish the husband, we already have laws for that as well. You can punish him for domestic violence, you can punish him for cruelty under the personal law and the IPC as well. You can get him punished for grievous hurt. So since the wife is being safeguarded, the husband is being safeguarded, what addition are you trying to achieve by adding us by getting a new law? We cannot just bring laws without having any additions, without having any additional benefits. My second question is, what mechanism do you suggest to find out whether the accusations are true or false? Like you are saying that it's a very private matter. So like there's nobody around. How will you know whether this act was consensual or a rape? How will you find that out? Thank you.
Okay, LEDC 29, you may start with your rebuttals.
Okay, so I would like to remind the judges, while the proposition spoke about criminalization of marital rape, today's topic is criminalization of marital rape meddling with the institution of marriage. We're not talking about whether we should criminalize marital rape or not. We're talking about whether it would meddle with the institution of marriage. So I think the proposition's entire speech was based upon the former and not the latter. And secondly, when it comes to criminalizing marital rape and why it is useful, even though it is outside the scope of the topic, since the proposition has asked me the question anyway, I will gladly answer. A, what do I mean to achieve by criminalizing marital rape? Justice, because that is what the court is supposed to achieve. And the second contention that nobody is in the bedroom. So what mechanism do you suggest? Well, I think even when you get raped on the streets, there's not a crowd watching you. So I think if you have evidence to support that and that you can prove that in court, you can prove marital rape in the bedroom in the court as well. It is not that difficult. And thirdly, I think in the speech, the proposition mentioned that there might be misuse of law if there's criminalization of marital rape. So my question to the proposition is, there's a lot of misuse of law, even in cases of crime and theft. So should we just abandon law altogether because it's just easier that way? Thank you.
Okay, LEDC 101, you can start with your rebuttals.
All right. So first of all, my question is not exactly answered, but first I'll try to answer your question. So we cannot altogether decriminalize theft or other offenses because these are the offenses happening between two unrelated people. Like a thief is not my wife. All right. So if a thief is coming to my house, he's stealing something. I can always prove this, that a stranger was present in my house. He was not supposed to be there. But a husband and a wife are together in the same house, and if there is a rape or if there is a consensual intercourse, there is no way to distinguish the two. Whereas in a theft, we can easily find out whether the person was supposed to be there, whether he was supposed to pick up my car and just move away like that. So that is the difference between other offenses and this particular offense. And this is the reason why for so many years it has been a topic of debate. If it was so easy to prove marital rape, it would have been criminalized anyways. If that satisfies your question. Secondly, since you're saying that it is about about meddling with the personal law, so yes, it is about meddling with the personal law. If what I'm saying is that if we criminalize, I'm sorry, that would definitely not meddle with the personal law. Thank you.
LEDC 29, you may start with your rebuttal.
Okay. Now I would like to tell the judges, like, the proposition tried very hard to take the debate into a matter of marital rape. But before I end, also, I like to stress on the fact that it is about meddling with the institution of marriage and not marital rape should be a crime or should not be a crime, and bringing that debate back into the scope of the topic again. The word meddle itself has a negative connotation. It means to interfere in something that is not one's concern. So what is the proposition trying to say exactly? That the institution of marriage is not a woman's concern to begin with. The word meddle cannot be used in case of trying to criminalize marital rape at the outset itself. Women fixing the institution by removing the unwarranted intrusion of marital rape can never be considered as meddlesome, because they're the victims of it and it will always be their right to look into it. Insinuating that marital rape is a part of the institution of marriage to begin with is saying that the untold horrors that the women have suffered through in the name of marriage is a fault of the institution and not the patriarchy twisting it to its own needs. The institution of marriage as we know today is inherently patriarchal. It might define itself as a union of two equals, but hey, even North Korea defines itself as a democracy. What the institution is supposed to be and what it is vastly different. The burden of upholding the institution has always been on the shoulders of a woman. The silence and their compromise. Fixing the institution and removing the intrusion of marital rape will never be a problem and it will never be meddlesome. So marital rape is not about marriage to begin with. It is about violence. If a gardener hits you on the head with a shovel, you will not call it gardening. Thank you.
Thank you, LEDC 29 and LEDC 101. Judges, now we are officially done with the final round. You may give your concluding remarks to the participants.
Madam, start.
With your permission, sir. Permission, Manu, can I just?
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Words. It was a very good topic. It was a very relevant topic. And I think both of you did good justice to the topic as well. But as LEDC 29, what she said was, see, the main issue that had to be highlighted was whether the criminalization of marital rape would meddle with the institution of marriage. Meddling with the institution of marriage had to be given a lot more importance. Because what exactly, we are not on the point whether the marital rape should be criminalized or not. How far criminalization of that act will have an adverse effect on the institution of marriage. That was the main issue. Now, as she said, meddling is a negative term as well. Now, there's something called mutual respect. I have a feeling personally, perhaps because I'm a wife, perhaps because I'm a woman, I should be saying this, I should confess that the question of mutual respect has to be given a lot of importance when it comes to the institution of marriage. So when you say criminalization of marital rape, when somebody approaches you, even be it your husband, when somebody approaches you for any kind of, or rather, even in a relationship, even a marriage relationship, if your husband wants a sexual favor from you or a sexual relationship from you without your consent, that would essentially affect a mutual respect that is expected between the two parties. So it is beyond the scope of criminalization. It's a matter when it comes to marriage. It's a matter of give and take. When your husband is not feeling good, if your husband is not in a mood to have his domestic course properly, there is no point in a woman forcing herself on him. This similar way, it's the similar way that the wife should also be treated. The wife is not a chattel when it comes to the husband or his relatives, or for that matter, the marital relationship totally. So perhaps that point was slightly missing when both of you argued. Of course, LEDC 29 tried to bring it around, but that I have a feeling 101, you did a very wonderful job when it came to the legal aspects of it. You had a very good point. At some point, I started really believing that criminalization of marital rape is not going to be doing good at all to the society. But when you think back, when you feel from the institution of marriage, when you think back, I think this aspect of mutual respect and the concept that a woman should not be treated as a chattel is more convincing to me. Anyway, good job by both of you. Excellent work. Both of you spoke on your feet. You thought on your feet, and it was a very good experience for me. Thank you.
I just wish to add a few comments to what Parvati ma'am has said. It was a very wonderful session, and it was really enjoyable for me to hear both opposing views. And one thing I felt was, it's a very relevant topic, and this topic actually redefines the concept of marriage. And the approaches to this topic essentially emanates from how we view marriage, whether as a patriarchal institution or as an institution which is based on mutual trust and agency of both the partners. And LEDC 101, he highlighted the practical difficulties which can ensue if this marital rape is criminalized. And he highlighted it quite well. And as Parvati ma'am was also saying, it was quite convincing. And there are certain practical difficulties, how you prove it in a court, all those things are there. And LEDC 29 was essentially on the conceptual aspect of marriage, and whether how we should view marriage, how marriage should be understood, how the agency of wife should be understood. And from that conceptual angle, we should criminalize asexual intercourse, which is without consent. That aspect was quite convincingly highlighted by LEDC 29. And maybe I would have wished to hear more arguments on whether a concept of marriage, whether it would create a reasonable or a legitimate expectation of sexual relationship among the partners, or if a marital relationship, can it be construed or can it be equated with a relationship between two parties, or even a parties who are in a kind of a relationship but not married? Or does marriage create a different kind of a relationship, or if there is a different classification? I mean, is there any legitimate ground for classifying marriage in a different level? Maybe some arguments in that light could have been more instructive, maybe because we are also lawyers. So some constitutional aspect also could have been brought in, maybe. Well, because we have 375, which is giving an IPC 375 gives an exception to marital rape. Whether that exception is justifiable or on the basis of Article 14 and 21. Maybe some arguments in that light could have been more instructive as well, since we are all lawyers. Otherwise, as a social commentary, it was a quite enlightening session for me as well. I also gained a lot of perspectives. Best wishes to both of you. Thank you.
So other judges have appraised your performance. I also enjoyed your performance. Both of you done well. As said by Manu Sebastian, you should have to correlate Article 14 to the exception in your arguments. That's we are a republic where we, irrespective of gender, we treat all equal. So the concept of equality should have been made. That in other way, Madam has said that mutual respect, that is emanate from equality, concept of equality. So anyway, you both done it well. I have my own opinion on this topic, but that I don't want to disclose it now. That is not appropriate. Anyway, both of you have done well. Congratulations.